Hello, New Mexico, and welcome to another episode of Around the Roundhouse, a podcast featuring the policies, politics, and engaging personalities of the land of enchantment, from the Roundhouse and beyond. My name is Daniel Chacón, and I'm the State House reporter for the Santa Fe New Mexican. Our guest this week is Maralyn Beck, founder and executive director of the New Mexico Child First Network, a nonprofit dedicated to improving the lives of children in foster care and empowering those who serve them through trauma-informed training, policy reform, and direct mentorship and support. Maralyn, you're one of my favorite people to speak with, so thank you for joining us today.
I'm excited to be here. Thank you.
Maralyn, you started your nonprofit after being a volunteer foster parent and seeing the issues with New Mexico's child welfare system firsthand. Exactly what did you see, and what was the turning point that pushed you to take action?
Thank you. I just turned 41. So I started fostering. My story is that if you remember in 2017, right around Christmas, there was a really horrible story out of Valencia County, and a baby died in foster care in a car seat, having not been touched for 12 hours. In 2017, I was young 30s. My brother had just had my first nephew. I was single. I was trying to figure out, what is my role in this world? I previously worked at APS. I have a long history with New Mexico. So I remember seeing that story. It was right around Christmas. My Christmas tree in my apartment was right there. And I thought, I don't know what I can do as a parent, but I can do more than keep a baby alive in a car seat for 12 hours. And so it was a very interesting, kind of just thought time in my life. I applied to be a foster parent. It took 8 months, which is wild again. And I thought it was crazy. Someone said, foster parent said, so if you're annoyed at how long and how bureaucratic it is, they want to kick you out before you ever became a foster parent. And that was one of the first things anyone ever said to me about CYFD. On my first day of being a foster parent, licensed foster parent, CYFD brought me a baby. And I work from home. You can see my background in the thing. I work from home. I have for 11 years. They brought me a baby out of the NICU with no name at about 8 o'clock. And the person said, we're going to hold a family-centered meeting. This baby was abandoned in the hospital. We're going to hold a family-centered meeting in FCM. There's a lot of acronyms in CYFD. And if we find a safety monitor, someone will come pick up the baby. And I was like, what's a safety monitor? And someone said, we just need someone who kind of knows the parents this is what a worker said to me, who knows the parents. They'll find me on San Mateo and Central, someone who says that they can just monitor the baby and they'll reunify the baby. And so I was like, that's weird. You don't have to be background checked, and you don't. A safety monitor is simply that. It is someone who will say, yeah, sure. And so at about 11 o'clock, they text me and they said, we found a safety monitor for a no-name baby. This baby was abandoned in the hospital, had no name, but they didn't want to take it into foster care, him into foster care. So they said, we're going to send a worker to your house to come pick up the baby. And I was like, okay. An hour later, maybe 35 minutes later, I got another text from a different investigator who said, we see you've been licensed. We see you're in open placement. Can we bring you 2 children? And I was like, yes, but I also have a baby. What do you want to do? Right. And so then fast forward about an hour, the investigator says, I'm coming to your house with the 2 children. And I was like, okay, but I still have this baby. Are you picking up the baby? Who's picking up this baby, right? And no one responded. I finally texted the other worker and I said, an investigator is bringing me 2 kids. What are you doing about this baby? And she said, I've been sitting outside your apartment for an hour. And I just want to pause there because I was really weird, the weirdest thing that anyone's ever said to me. And I was like, why are you sitting outside my apartment? Just knock on my door, whatever. So she comes up. Because I had worked in state government and APS, I asked her to see her badge. I took a picture of her badge. And she took and left the baby. Then the investigator comes with 2 children under 2, no car seats. They are only wearing diapers, no shoes. This is the first day of being foster licensed. And I said, okay, here I'm carrying 2 babies up in my apartment. And I said, what are their names? And he hands me a placement agreement, just a piece of paper. And I was like, they're clearly Hispanic names. How do you say them? And he's like, I don't know. So the babies were both, I think they were like 10 months and 19 months. I ended up taking them to the UNMH pediatrician the next day. And I said, I didn't even know having kids 2 under 9 months was possible. And she was like, it's not ideal. But the moral of the story is that I got another text at 6 o'clock on the first day and said, we haven't found anyone to pick up the baby. We're sending a worker to come to your house now. And I thought,
to bring back the baby.
They thought I still had the baby. My first day of being a foster parent, I had a actual panic attack, and I thought someone had stolen a baby. Luckily for me, I knew enough to take the picture of the badge, and that was in 2018. Monique Jacobson was the then secretary. She was leaving terms of office then, and she had a foster parent town hall. About a month later, I recounted that story to her in a room full of about 200 foster families, and they looked at me and they're like, oh girl, you're never going to make it. They don't talk to each other. They're in different units. I'm like, you lost a baby. Like, where was that? Like, how on earth? And people will talk about it to this day, that meeting 7 years ago. They're like, you're never going to survive. Well, and here's the thing. I at that point had another placement. Again, I'd been licensed for 2 months and I had over 5 placements. Like, it was wild how quick these kids come in and out of care. And I said, I take my preschooler to preschool, and you thumbprint in and you thumbprint out at the very front door. At the very front door, in every single door. This was 7 years ago. You thumbprint in, you thumbprint out, you have your own code. I said, I get text from the daycare what she eats when she takes naps, how many carrots she eats. You're telling me CYFD doesn't have this kind of technology? And the answer was an astounding yes. So this goes into the nonprofit. As I said, I was like 33. I raised my hand and I said, okay, so that's wild. My next question is, how do I get respite? I said, as a foster parent, I was told I get 3 days of respite a month. That's law, that's statute, that's in code regulation. I said, I'm single. Like, I didn't actually ever want to be a full-time foster parent. I wanted to be the person you call when you try to find a long-term placement, right? Mm-hmm. And so the secretary, then Jacobson, looked at her PIO and said, takeaway number 1 from this town hall, we should have an active list of foster parents. And then she said, takeaway number 2, we should put it in Excel. And I will never forget how wild I thought that was. Like, we're working with people who wouldn't like, how would you do it? Like, you as the leader have to tell them what platform. So that was like my first 2 months of being a foster parent. It only got worse. We started a Facebook page that they had never allowed foster parents to talk to each other. And my first long-term placement was moved the day after her second birthday, which her second birthday was on December 23rd. So without a placement agreement, overnight, they moved the kid out of my care. It was just wild on Christmas Eve. And so that about broke my heart. And I said I wanted to sue the department. And my brother, who's an attorney, said, you can't really do that. I said, maybe I'll go back to law school. He said, you know legislators, you are an advocate, like, you do this. And so I started a nonprofit. That was in 2019, January. The wild thing is that New Mexico, it was like right when Michelle was taking office. So we really thought there's 12 people on my board. They're former foster parents. We have a superintendent, like, political spectrum, diversity across the entire state, you name it. We thought Governor Lujan Grisham would welcome us with open arms and be like, okay, we spent so much time during her transition talking to her transition team about, like, here's the issues. She could have blamed it on the former administration and walked in. She hired Brian Blaylock. And then on your Santa Fe, New Mexican article this morning, someone said, they put it really well, and this current administration has completely obliterated the department. So that has been 7 years. And I didn't think this would become my life. 7 years ago, I asked my brother if I could sue CYFD. He said I was out of my mind. My then boyfriend, Andrew, we now live together. We're partners. He's an attorney. My brother and Andrew will tell you to this day that they thought I was a crazy person. I was exaggerating. They kept being like, there's no way what you're saying is true. There's laws, there's rules, there's checks and balances. Andrew has now come on to my nonprofit as the COO. He works on the nonprofit as much. My brother spends most of his days suing CYFD. You now have the Attorney General investigating CYFD. And 7 years of gaslighting later, it is worse than it's ever been.
Well, I was going to ask you just that. In the 7 years that you've headed this nonprofit. Has the situation improved?
I've never seen it this bad. Where we are today, this is the #1 facing crisis in the state. And I've worked on a lot of issues. Like I worked at APS. I was in their communications office for several years. I've seen education. We're not great there. But those are systems that function. Right now, the child welfare system, and it's not just CYFD, who also in 2022 created a new state office called the Office of Family Representation and Advocacy to try to alleviate that department. That's terrible. So every state in New Mexico foster care gets a guardian ad litem or a court-assigned attorney or youth attorney if they're over 14. You don't have child fatalities in a functioning system. We have the CISC contract. You now have Presbyterian who's overseeing all the Medicaid for every kid in state custody. That's not working. And it's interesting because about the same month I had that town hall with Monique in September of 2018, the Kevin S. lawsuit was filed. So it was filed September 2018, and that became, or the idea was it would become a class action lawsuit against foster care. And so 14 plaintiffs, kids in foster care and their attorneys, including Disability Rights New Mexico, Pegasus Legal Services for Children, the Native American Disability Law Center, and several other kids came and sued HCA, or the Healthcare Authority, and CYFD, and said, our kids in care should not be more traumatized coming into care than they were previously. We should have a trauma responsive system. And we don't have enough providers. This is 7 years. This is why it's like so sad to say this in front of you. 7 years later, it's worse. 7 years ago, they said we don't have a trauma-informed system. Our kids are not in appropriate placements. They're moving too much. You're not having a child-centric system. We have kids sleeping in offices, kids sleeping in hotels. But what is so sad to come before you is that it is exponentially worse than when that lawsuit was filed.
And the Kevin S. lawsuit was recently in the news. In fact, here at the New Mexican, my colleague Esteban Candelaria wrote about it. And the finding was that the arbitrator found the state had not fully abided by a remedial order intended to force CYFD and the Healthcare Authority to make good on an array of commitments. Where exactly is the state falling short?
Everywhere. I think that's what's most alarming, is that the interesting thing about that is, so the Kevin S. plaintiffs filed suit in September of 2018. Michelle took office January, hired Brian Blaylock in January. So for all of 2019, they worked on, are we going to go to court? Are we going to settle in court or out? And in March of 2020, right before the pandemic, the state and the plaintiff said, we don't need to go to court. We're just going to have a settlement agreement. We're going to do so amazing. We're going to work together hand in hand. It actually made the New York Times. Groundbreaking settlement agreement. And so what they said is that we don't need to go to court. Here's what each side is agreeing to. And the state's going to have a trauma reform system. If we need to go to court, we're going to go to mediation and then we're an arbitration. And that's only if you don't do any of these things. So it's worth saying that the arbitrator actually only came into existence because the state failed to meet any of their first agreements. And then they went into breach of their first agreements. And we kept sending, you're being naughty, you're not doing anything letters, right? And no one was listening. So they went to arbitration. And now the arbitrator is saying, you're not doing anything. Words that we have national experts who actually oversee monthly, who are the ones who took it. Imminent danger, safety is a risk, system in crisis, matter of life or death urgency, urgency, guys. These are the words that are in these reports. Matter of urgency. I think it was a profound matter of urgency was in this report that came out last week.
Maralyn, let me ask you, you referenced our Governor Michelle Lujan Grisham. If she was sitting here today, what would you tell her?
Attention. I would say, Governor, this is on you. And I hate that we passed the buck because it's worth saying. We had Brian Blaylock. He got fired for lying to legislators and using signal and transparency. There were whistleblower suits. Then you bring in Barbara Vigil, who spent 2 of her months in the year that she was there in London. Her husband lives in London. So like we hired someone who wasn't even in New Mexico full time. And I also think she was a judge who had no idea what the frontline workers were. You had Mariana Padilla come in as interim. And then while you were going to do a national search, you put in Teresa Casadas, who had been there since day one. Governor, this is on you. And I want to be very clear. Our kids are not okay. What you're hearing is not real. And the only person that can fix this system is the governor. And that says that in the Kevin S. settlement. Of the latest report, it says what the co-neutrals, the national experts, say would the only successful systems reform, and I quote, is on that page, you can pull it up, an engaged governor. Our governor is not engaged. And it says a committed and genuine leadership of the agency. And we don't have that. So I'm not mincing words. If you want to fix CYFD and the child welfare system, including the guardian ad litems, the Medicaid providers, the behavioral health providers, the buck stops on the governor.
Okay. Maralyn, you mentioned the number of cabinet secretaries who have served in, as obviously secretaries of CYFD, with our latest being Teresa Casados. How would you rate her job performance? And, are her hands tied in some ways, do you think?
No, her hands are not tied. The only person that would be tying those are the governors. Terrible. I want to be very clear, and I said this publicly. Today is August 28th, is the day we're recording this. We had the first suicide in state care on April 12th. His name's Jaden Chavez. Guys, we've had another suicide the following month of a girl who was pregnant in foster care. The following month, a baby who was 10 months old in foster care died. We've seen 3 fatalities. Actually, with last week, with the Chavez County, we've seen 4 additional fatalities of children who have touched the department. One call to Child Protective Services in a functioning system should protect the life of a child. If you call Pound Safe and you say, I'm concerned about this, in a functioning system, we function, the system functions, and we throw out the things. We protect the children. If it's concerning or if it's not, we concerning calls and we screen out the lady who's sitting out the park with binoculars, right? Who's like just calling in for whatever reason. Our system is not functioning. Our kids are not okay. We are seeing unprecedented, again, you can't actually turn on the news without reading about another child fatality, another near fatality. Kara, the governor's priority in 2019, my nonprofit was just getting off the ground, was the year that she said, we want to remove substance exposure at birth as child abuse. Substance exposure shall not be child abuse. And that's all well and good, except you're starting to talk about babies being born exposed to meth, cocaine, fentanyl. You have mental health. We have complex poverty. We have, that's the thing about child welfare, which is, I think, I didn't want to be like so down on this podcast. I want to say for your listeners, I was a perfect person. Actually, I had one of my best friends on my birthday last week say, Maralyn, what happened to you? I graduated top 10 in high school. I was a perfect people-pleasing, honor society, didn't speak out, band nerd. Like, what happened to you? And this department happened. And here's what I also want to say for anyone listening is it doesn't have to be like this. Like 49 states are doing it differently. And that's why I think I'm so mad at the governor is like, to be a leader, you have to be authentic and genuine, self-aware, right? I don't think anyone would disagree. What we need is like, am I doing right by the people? This journey has pushed me to be a leader and it's pushing me to speak out against the governor right now. I have to be self-aware. Am I saying, if you've ever been to a Rotary meeting, they like say the 4 truths of Rotarians. Is it truthful? Is it helpful? Like, am I doing good? And I don't think the governor's asking herself those questions.
Okay. Maralyn, you mentioned substance exposed newborns or substance exposed babies. We've been reading a lot about these so-called CARA plans involving children born with drugs in their system. For folks who don't know what a CARA plan is, can you help us understand what a CARA plan is and also whether you think the governor is taking the right approach in potentially placing more infants in state custody?
Yeah, so this is the bill that she prioritized in 2019. She was brand new to office. I don't even think we had a secretary when this bill started to come up. It was HB 230, and it was one of the governor's top 5 priorities for child welfare her first month in office. And it was to say substance exposure shall not be child abuse at birth. And New Mexico is going to take a public health approach to the federal law said Comprehensive Addiction Recovery Act to get federal funds, $250,000. That's what this is worth. Each state shall track how many babies are born substance exposed and if they're getting a plan of care. And a plan of care meant, how do we reduce substance exposure? The idea was, at the federal level, is that if you can reduce substance exposure at birth, because you know a pregnant mom, this is supposed to be prenatal, if a pregnant mom says, yes, I'm drinking wine every night, I'm doing cocaine every night, I'm doing cannabis, and you say, hey, mom, that's not great for you or the baby. And if you can reduce that substance exposure and substance use or misuse, by the time that baby's born, you improve outcomes for 2 generations, mom and baby. Somehow New Mexico took this wildly left turn, and the federal government is actually re-looking at this plan because of what has come out of New Mexico. We are doing this so badly, so poorly. We know 3 babies have died in the past 3 months. If you're tracking it, I have tracked it. I have autopsies. The only way you can actually track if a child was born substance exposed is through their autopsy. So I've been looking at autopsies for 6 years. It's very morbid, but if you ask the governor, if you ask CYFD, DOH, or HCA, they don't have the data. So what is supposed to happen is that if a child is born withdrawing or clearly exhibiting symptoms of substance use, then our law says you create a plan of safe care. Mm-hmm. What we have been doing for 6 years is giving moms a piece of paper and letting them walk out of the hospital. The Department of Health identified in 2021 that 41% of these people who even had the piece of paper didn't know they had a piece of paper. There was no tracking, there was no oversight, there was no support.
And the plans are voluntary; they're not mandatory.
Voluntary. And again, it's so like I don't even know what the data says, and the LFC has done a great job. The LFC's program evaluation, if you're still listening to this podcast and you're still interested in what we're saying, the LFC has done an incredible program evaluation that says 7 out of 8 people are not getting services. So it's not only we're not creating it prenatally, we're not doing it, but we're instead of calling in CYFD, we're letting these people just walk out of the hospital. What the LFC learned is that the hospitals were calling in concerns and CYFD was screening them out because they said, well, the law says substance exposure isn't child abuse, so you could walk out. We know at least 1 baby was buried in the backyard, dead, Carlsbad. We've seen literally 1 fatality of kids who were born substance exposed, who walked out of the hospital and have died per month since this plan went into care. So your original question was like, is the governor making the right decision? I think every single hospital is doing it differently because the only way right now the hospitals have actually received information is through press. The governor hasn't actually said anything different to any of the hospitals. So again, we're back in the same place, is that the only directive that the hospitals have seen to this day is call in, screened in. If you notice the word screened in, the governor's directive says all screened in newborns shall be placed on a 42 or 72-hour hold. To screen in, you actually have to go through CYFD. So like, we're not fixing the problems. I think me explaining all of this is so hard, but other states have asked how the governor did the directive. I have all but put my life on hold to fix this department. And so much of it is like reading the statute, reading the policy, reading the law, and being like, no one else is doing that. Other states have issues with child welfare. None are as complex or broken as ours. Right now, Bernalillo County has a 60% vacancy rate. I was just in Las Cruces, as you know, for the CCJ hearing. And like Cervantes is like, maybe we're being too mean to the workers. No, you're not. I told the governor 2 weeks ago that there was a dead kid on her case and she didn't know. You have a broken culture. You have corruption. You have bad middle management. Our frontline workers are not the problems. They've been there 2 weeks. Their supervisor's been there 3. This is why this is on the governor, because if the governor cared about this agency and if she cared about the kids that it impacts, the 2,000 children and many more that are touched, she should go sit at any of the offices, Santa Fe, Roswell, Bernalillo, Doña Ana, Las Vegas. Sit there for a week, work out of it. You spend the night with those kids who are sleeping in the office. You see the parents who are coming or not coming for visits. You see the workers who have to drive these kids around. And here's the thing, this goes directly into the juvenile justice crisis, because all of a sudden we're arresting 12-year-olds for murder.
That you raised that point, because there is an effort afoot to basically do stricter penalties for violent juvenile offenders. What's your take on that? Do you think that that'll only make the situation worse, or that it will send a message to these juveniles that, you know, they can't be getting in trouble with the law?
Well, here's the thing. I think it's asking the wrong question. I'm not a juvenile justice professional. I'm a citizen of New Mexico. You can actually see my window. In October of last year, I live outside of a park in Albuquerque, and I was the victim of a mass shooting. A bullet went through my window. I live right by a park. We found out that 150 rounds had been shot at the park the night before, and it went through the window that my nephews and nieces sleep in. So I've been a victim of teenage violent crime. There's still a bullet hole in my wall. That being said, as a child advocate, what it says to me is that we are missing upstream interventions on these kids. When you have 12-year-olds shooting guns of like machine rifle automatics at midnight or 2 a.m. on a Saturday night, that is a parenting failure. Like, where are your children? The UNM case, why was there a 14-year-old in the dorm at 4 a.m.? So we are penalizing because we can control that. So yes, I would like to be safer in my neighborhood. I would like not stray bullets to come through my window. As someone who is on the ground working with children, we have the highest number of children with trauma in the entire country, us in Mississippi. That's fact. What it says to me is that we're not parenting our kids. We're not providing the resources they need. Juvenile crime is a symptom of a larger issue. Where are your parents? I mean, again, why was there a 14-year-old at UNM at 4 a.m.? My at 14, pretty sure my curfew was 10. I got to like 11 and 12. But what on earth are we doing? So no, I think the juvenile justice crime, I think the idea that like we're not locking up enough, let's lock up 2 to 3 times more 12-year-olds, like what conversation are we having? What it says to me is like our foster care numbers are pretty consistent at 2,000 kids. That's the size of a high school. Again, do I think the governor and Teresa are doing a good job? If I said this at the LHHS hearing, if you are a parent and you call your high school principal right now at 11:37 and say, my kid, I need to get a hold of him. We've had a family emergency and he's not answering his cell phone. Can you go find my kid? The answer better be yes. And right now, if you ask Teresa, how many kids are in the office? How many kids are in foster care? Where is my kid? They lost an infant on my first day. Like we're not holding the same standards. So juvenile justice is a critical conversation, but if you want to know why 12-year-olds are shooting at parks in Albuquerque or Las Cruces, Santa Fe, Espanola, it's where are their parents?
And I mean, who does that ultimately? I mean, we can't blame the governor or Teresa Casados for that.
But again, like that's part of the Kevin S. lawsuit is that we need more behavioral health providers. Like, right? I love what our state is doing with free lunch. Like, we are intervening. But if you look at the LFC program evaluations for home visiting, for early intervention, we are the only state right now with free home visiting, free universal preschool, free universal pre-K. And guess what? We can't enroll enough families. We are not hitting the families that need the supports. Somehow we went to this universal approach. So I'm great. My sister-in-law can have free preschool, but the families who genuinely need it and can't afford to work and care for their kids are not getting the supports they need. Like somehow we missed the target. And now we know LFC just announced 2 weeks ago, less than 13% of families who enroll in home visiting are even completing the programs. Every care baby, if you are born substance exposed to parents who are actively doing substances, you and your family deserve wraparound services. So back to your original question, like, should every care baby be going home to foster care? Do we have enough we do not have enough foster care providers. I wouldn't tell my worst enemy to be a foster parent right now. I'm working on improving the system, but we need to keep our kids safe. We just saw this past weekend a mom arrested in Albuquerque doing meth with a 2-year-old. Meth actually changes your brain chemistry. So when we're talking about meth as the drug you are of your choice, it gives you homicidal ideations and paranoia. Mom had the 2-year-old actually had a slit on her wrist, or a slit on her neck when they found her. She was wearing diapers, no shoes. It was raining. Mom said she was trying to kill the 2-year-old. So meth is not safe to be a parent. You can't actually attach. Like, we're not just saying, like, this isn't just about, like, oh, you made a bad decision, you had a glass of wine last night. Like, literally lives could be in danger. If you are doing meth, your brain is not functioning like a human.
Maralyn, you, just in the time that we've spoken, it's just there. You've outlined some really horrific cases. Has there been a moment where you've said, you know what, this is too much, I'm going to throw my hands up in the air and do something different?
Yeah, a lot. And it's more recent than not. The foster mom who killed the 10-month-old, I know that foster mom. And her license had previously been revoked. And somehow under this administration, she got it back. So she was overplaced. We don't have enough foster home providers. That one really got under me. The 18-month-old who died August 2nd. I know her aunt, really good family. They reunified too quickly. It's starting to be personal. I will say what breaks me, just so that you know, what will break me is that we cannot reimburse foster parents and kinship guardianships on time. That's it. That our department continues to not pay the providers. If you remember the governor and we just gave CYFD $100 million more in this past legislative session. We were supposed to increase funds for foster families. They didn't hit the button. They forgot to pay the foster families this month. It happens once every 3 months. My phone, I get 6 calls a day on, like, Maralyn, how do I reimburse for my kids' dental? CYFD is declining my reimbursement. That's what will break me. Like, I can't fix reunification. I can't fix the drug crisis. I can't fix those things. But I'm like, if we could just, like, send kids home with new clothes. I had a foster parent call me 2 nights ago and say, Maralyn, I got 2 emergency placements. They don't have shoes and CYFD isn't giving them vouchers for clothing. Like, what? That's what will break me. That's what I just am like, I text messaged Teresa, Diego at the governor's office, and Valerie Sandoval. Like, I got those kids into locker 505 yesterday, but, like, if we can't do the bare minimum, how on earth are we supposed to do the big things?
Maralyn, the Lujan Grisham administration has about 17 or 16 months left. Obviously, a gubernatorial campaign is heating up here in New Mexico. What advice, will this fall on the next governor, and what advice would you give him or her?
This is a good thing for me to say. One of the things you and I might have talked about is I'm a civil society fellow with the Aspen Institute. And part of that is because I want to lead with authenticity and grace. I need our leaders to stop being political. These are about kids. This is not about Republican or Democrat, this administration versus the next versus the last. There are kids sleeping in offices. You could see the unions posted this week that they can't get a meeting with CYFD. You have workers who are afraid to go to work because the kids have so much trauma, they're violent. What I would like to see, and I hope the governor listens to this, I'd like her to spend the night in Pine Tree, and I don't want to put this off for 17 months. I would like her and Teresa to go undercover boss and spend some time with the workers in Las Vegas, in Doña Ana, in Roswell, in Clovis, Silver City. These are not insurmountable problems. Los Angeles County has 88,000 kids in foster care, and they have better outcomes than us. We have 2,000. We have a really big state, but if we don't start taking care of our most vulnerable infants, like our kids, I would like the governor to go spend time in the Socorro Hospital where they had 7 care babies born this month. And they're fighting over, do we release? Do we not? Do we put into foster care? We don't have foster. Like, there's questions. But like at the end of the day, I know that about Teresa. Teresa's a human. I've had many conversations with Teresa. She's a grandmother. She's a great grandmother. She cooks family dinners for Thanksgiving. Who's cooking our kids' Thanksgiving dinner, right? Like I offered to do that. This is a human problem, and it deserves the dignity of being matched with leaders who have humanity. And for whatever reason, our small little state gets caught up in the weeds about politics and partisan and power and all of that. But no, I think what I would really like is I don't want this to go to the next administration. And honestly, what would be the dream is that this administration and the next administration work together to like really take this, stop being political and like, okay, like what's the next plan? Like, right, if you are going to retire in 18 months, you know, you have to have a succession plan. The governor, Teresa, should be meeting. We know the candidates or more candidates, but like that's why transition teams exist. So no, I don't want to put this off for 17 months. Our kids don't deserve it. Our workers don't deserve it. Our families don't. I would like our governor to lead with compassion and authenticity.
At a recent Legislative Health and Human Services Committee, Representative Eleanor Chavez of Albuquerque, a Democrat, compared the CYFD to she said it's like the Titanic and it's almost ready to go under. Is it too late?
The Titanic is still floating. CYFD is not floating. It's not floating. And so I would agree with her, but I would say it's gone under. And you have to start recovering bodies. But like, that's why I'm saying like the governor, this is on the governor. And I appreciate the flooding and I appreciate fires and I appreciate like there's so many things, but it's time to declare an emergency. It's time to have the self-awareness to say, if you don't get in with the early intervention with our care babies who are born substance exposed. Did you know that if you're substance exposed at birth, I just sent out an email about this. You're welcome to join my newsletter. Your body actually is deformed because like you're so used to being in fight or flight. Like the babies in utero are like actually like physically like they're really fight. Like, you can always say like a baby who's substance exposed is really strong. You'll hear people like say that like my baby's so strong, but they're so tight. Their muscles are tight. They actually need physical therapy. What are we doing to our kids, right? And so this is not just about the 2,000 kids in foster care. This is not just about the 120 babies being born substance exposed every single month in New Mexico. This is about what we want our state to look like and the kind of leadership it needs to take us there.
Okay. I saw your testimony at a recent legislative committee meeting, and it sort of reminded me of Angela Bassett in that scene lighting her ex-husband's clothes on fire on his car. Are you planning to continue this fight, and what does the future hold for Maralyn Beck?
Yeah, I want to be very clear. I'm not backing down because it's too important. Again, like I said, someone said, what happened to you? This is not the person I was in my DNA. This department, this fight has broken my DNA, but I don't do it for myself. Every day I talk to foster families, grandparents raising grandkids, trying to get access to their grandkids. The families of New Mexico, this work hurts them. And to speak out for them, that's not a privilege I take lightly. But no, you better expect me at every hearing. You better expect me. I'm going to drive to Las Cruces, and then they're going to not cancel the freaking meeting again, but I'm going to be there. I'd love podcast recommendations as I'm driving across the state, but no, it's time. If you want to get serious about improving outcomes and again, you want to cut the juvenile justice crime off. You want that to stop, and juvenile justice crime becomes adult crime, becomes violent crime. If you want to improve our state, it starts here. There are simple solutions. It doesn't take a lot to I just posted a quote on my Instagram that's like, every child is one loving and nurturing adult away from success.
We spoke a little bit about leadership and your participation as a civil society fellow with the Aspen Institute. I want to end up on a positive note. It sounds like you're going to Africa here soon.
I'm going to South Africa on September 11th, and it's going to be the longest plane ride of my entire life. I'm very nervous about it. If you're listening still, and you have any hints on how to survive a 17-hour plane ride, I'm all ears. I'm also desperate for like the Netflix series that's going to get me from plane, like the ground. Like for 17 hours, I need like the next show that I can just like tune into and like forget that I'm on a plane for 17 hours. We're going to Cape Town. We're going to Cape Town. We're going to wine country. I was part of my fellowship, which I'm really proud about. We were just in The Hague in Amsterdam. We had lunch with Desmond Tutu's daughter. So I expect to see Nelson Mandela's prison. And it is a fellowship. It's called Civil Society Fellowship, but it is a fellowship about creating this next generation of leader who's willing to sit in discomfort with compassion and grace, and talk about really uncomfortable things, because right now we're so divided that we don't. And how do you hold space for hard things? And it's actually made me a better advocate in New Mexico. Bold Futures and our organization sometimes will be agreeing and disagreeing. And my favorite person in Santa Fe is their lobbyist. So I've learned, and I again, sitting with grace and authenticity, honesty, listening, that's how we make real change. I hate how our New Mexico legislature is set up. I'm like, we're having a conversation. No, we're not. We're like just sitting at the talking. When a legislator is talking, no one else is listening. If we want to change the state, it is through relationships and trust, authenticity and honesty. And I keep saying that, like, the governor is not being honest about the situation of CYFD, and self-awareness and self-reflection. I want things better for our state, and it would be really nice if someone said, like, I know it's not doing great. How can I help? And like, take off the heels or the boots and go sit in the receiving center. Ask the kids who are sitting in offices, sleeping there, like, what do you need?
Well, Maralyn, thank you so much for shedding light on the situation at CYFD, and I wish you well on a 17-hour flight. That does not sound
I'm really nervous.
but I know that you've dealt with more challenging issues in your role with the nonprofit, so I know you can handle a 17-hour flight.
Yeah. So again, if you have Netflix shows or suggestions for how to survive a 17-hour trip, I'm flying from DC to Cape Town. And then I have a globe for my nephews. That's 100% over the ocean, just in case you needed to know. Also, I was like, that's raising my anxiety a little bit. But we're fine. It's fine. I think we'll do a safari. I'm excited. I'm also going for 11 days to have very hard conversations. And that's the kind of stuff I want our legislators, our leaders, and our public servants to just really appreciate, is that we can fix this state, we can care for our children, but we need heart leaders. Like, we need leaders who are willing to do the heart, HEART work, because that's what we need right now.
Okay. Well, Maralyn, again, thank you. And thank you to our viewers and listeners for tuning into Around the Roundhouse. Join us every week as we talk to newsmakers in the political realm by subscribing to our podcast through Spotify, Apple Music, or I should say YouTube Music, or wherever you get your podcasts. For the latest developments, follow our coverage online at SantaFeNewMexican.com, where you can also subscribe to our political newsletter, The Roundhouse Report. Until next time, I'm Daniel Chacón, and this has been Around the Roundhouse.